Okay, Ms. Gray.
Got it. Thank you for being here.
Yes, Mr. Nong.
I had one more. Carla, one of the things that you had mentioned is that one of the fundamental purposes of the BDCP is its role as a habitat conservation plan or a natural communities conservation plan. And whenever we get into this discussion, I always find it confusing personally, at least, the role between Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, in their role as protecting threatened species, and what they did with the biological opinion, and then what you're trying to do with the habitat conservation plan, and the interplay between the biological opinion and BDCP. I wonder if you might clarify that for everybody.
Sure. So the biological opinions essentially regulate operations of the current state and federal water project systems in the Delta. And they include a series of restoration actions and flow conditions that the agencies, in their opinions, determine are necessary to avoid jeopardy of the species.
The regulatory agencies you're talking
correct,
about. Okay.
Correct. Conservation plans are different in that they look to promote the actual recovery of species, and understanding that recovery of species actually takes time. These are longer-term plans that develop a series of conservation measures or actions that are designed to help those species recover. So particularly with the Natural Communities Conservation Planning Act, there's a higher regulatory standard than we need to meet for the species that are covered by the plan. So the plan itself includes some of the very same flow conditions and restoration activities that are described in the biological opinion associated with the existing system, but because it's meeting this recovery standard and is proposing additional things like the other stressor measures, for example, that's a hugely important component of the conservation plan and what we think we need to do to be effective to achieve this recovery. But it would include habitat restoration contemplated in the biological opinions, but more than that, because it needs to provide for a broader suite of species. And it provides, as I mentioned, it contemplates flow criteria for species like longfin smelt that are not currently the subject of protections under the existing biological opinions. One of the things that's important, an important contribution of a conservation planning effort, is that it looks at these species needs more broadly and their broader habitat needs, and that's where you get sort of multiple species benefits by single kinds of restoration actions. So there's overlap in terms of different species needs.
But that's a key difference between the biological
Correct.
opinions and
Correct.
BDCP, is that
Correct.
you are, in fact, looking at a much broader
Correct.
suite of environmental concerns.
Correct. So the biological agencies in the conservation plan provide guidance because, and particularly in this kind of a system where there's a degree of scientific uncertainty around the biological responses, we certainly need their guidance to shape a plan that is going to achieve this higher standard. But they do need to, once we provide an application for incidental take permits to them, which is what the draft plan will do, they need to do their own analyses and make the findings and do their due diligence to make the determination of whether or not we meet the NCCPA standard in this case.
So that's probably where the rubber meets the road, are the incidental take permits. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So ultimately, we need to have the HCP and the NCCP approved by the regulatory agencies, and in return, they'll issue incidental take permits and allow operation of the state
operation
projects,
of the
Central Valley project.
projects, the construction and operation of new facilities, but also the restoration of habitat. So, for example, the aquatic habitat restoration displaces other terrestrial needs. So we have a strategy that, taken all together, is meant to cover the aquatic species and the terrestrial species needs in the Delta. So it's a whole holistic plan, and all of those actions are covered. If you wanted to know, it's called Chapter 4 in the plan. But that's where they're listed. But that is where the rubber meets the road. You're quite right.
Okay. I think I'll stop right there.
Okay. Ms. Gray?
I do.